I call the Honourable Member Jackie Dean.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to congratulate Member of Parliament Eric Roy for shepherding this bill, this local bill, through the House, and to add my voice to the view that Stewart Island is indeed unique. I have spent a bit of time on Stewart Island a few years ago. It is a pretty special place. In the time that I was spending weeks at a time on the island, there were no cruise ships. There was certainly fishing activity, and it was a very busy place, but the pressures that those cruise ships and the visitors have brought to Stewart Island have certainly increased over the years, but the population hasn't significantly increased, and therein lies the problem of a small community in a highly desirable destination funding the infrastructure for that visitor presence on the island. And yes, of course they get the benefit of those visitors. Tourism is a wonderful source of income, as is fishing for the locals of Stewart Island, but nonetheless a very small population and a large visitor number over the years, which is increasing, has meant pressure on the ratepayers of Stewart Island to fund that necessary infrastructure. And all of those of us who represent small communities, I can think of perhaps the Mackenzie District Council, for example, who have a small static rating base and a desirable destination for visitors, come under the same sort of pressures. But I have to acknowledge and agree with my colleague Eric Roy that in the case of Stewart Island this is acute, and it might well be that the Chathams are under the same sorts of conditions, and maybe in time they will also bring a local bill to the House for our consideration, and I reckon that probably also would enjoy support from members who understand the pressures that ratepayers have under these circumstances. This is a really interesting bill because it does what we wouldn't consider doing on the mainland, if you like, and that is imposing a levy on visitors. We wouldn't do that into Ranfurly because there are many roads into Ranfurly, and the cost of gathering that. Well, yes, hubodometers, yes. My colleague has been particularly helpful in my speech, and he's suggesting that hubodometers on the bike trail is an option, as indeed it is. But the point is, there are many roads in and out of Ranfurly, there are many roads in and out of Oamaru, of Wanaka, of any number of small visitor destinations in New Zealand, but there are only a couple of ways to get to Stewart Island. You can either get to Stewart Island by boat, or you can arrive on an aeroplane. I think I prefer the aeroplane. I know it's bumpy, and I know you tend to wave around a bit, but do you get air sick, do you get boat sick? But there are only two ways to get to Stewart Island, and so it becomes a little bit more easy to collect the levy. I think the provisions in the bill which describe how that levy is to be utilised is quite useful. So what the Southland District Council will be able to do, and that is on behalf of the Stewart Island community, is that this bill will give them the legal mechanisms to receive the monies, the levy monies, and also the ability to spend the levy monies. And I think something around, did I read $160,000 per annum is projected to be brought from that levy. That represents about 40,000 people going to Stewart Island each year. So that $160,000 will enable the local community to upgrade sewage system, water supply, and I don't know, it'll be up to them obviously, but maybe some walking tracks and footpaths. That is the stuff of local government, and that is the stuff which this local community will be able to spend the money on. I want to acknowledge that Eric Roy has been working on this issue since 1994, and if you do the maths, that's quite some considerable time to consider just after he left school, in fact, which has given plenty of time for the consideration of this bill by the wider community and by the Parliament, and I understand a number of parliamentarians have also considered this bill. And so the provisions that this bill gives to the Southland District Council is they can collect and spend the levy by establishing a subcommittee consisting of representatives from the tourism industry, the community board and the district council. And I'm assuming that the community board refers to the Stewart Island Community Board, so it will indeed be the locals together with the tourism industry who will be the people charged with spending these fees. It's interesting that throughout the course of this bill in the select committee stage a number of changes were made to it, and I'm interested that new clause 3 was put into the bill, which clarified that this levy would not impact on the locals, so it would impact on visitors to the island. So it wouldn't impact on those fishermen who came and went from the island, or indeed anybody else who had business in Invercargill. So they would not be impacted. So this is quite tightly focused on where the levy needs to be collected from. Mr Speaker, I'm very pleased to stand up to speak in the third reading of the Southland District Council Stewart Island Rakiura Visitor Levy Empowering Bill. I want to congratulate once again Eric Roy for doing what a good elected MP should do, and that is looking after the interests of his constituents. And with that, I commend the bill to the House.
I call the Honourable